Hi everyone! Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The air fractured with a brutal crunch of teeth meeting bone. Anya gagged, the coppery taste of blood a vile film on her tongue. Her home, the familiar glade within Silverstream territory, had devolved into a swirling vortex of claw and fang. The Blackwood pack, a relentless avalanche of shadow and muscle, crashed against the silver tide of her own. Their bane, a guttural chorus of victory, drowned out the desperate yelps of her kin. Driven by primal fear, she retaliated with unrestrained ferocity, tearing at the encroaching ebony wolves. Each downed Blackwood offered only a fleeting respite from the inevitable. Defeat hung heavy in the air, a palpable shroud. Months of relentless raids had eroded their strength, leaving them vulnerable against the Blackwood's raw power. Her gaze frantically scanned the melee, searching for a familiar figure. Alpha Kalen Silverstream, her father, whose roar once commanded the very forest, embodied their dwindling resistance. Then she saw him, locked in a deadly ballet with a figure of terrifying elegance. Alpha Kalen Blackwood. His coat, the shade of a moonless night, framed eyes that burned with cold ambition. Anya surged through the chaos, desperate to intervene, only to be blindsided by a Blackwood larger than any she'd encountered. She slammed into the earth, winded. A searing pain shot through her shoulder as the wolf's fangs raked her hide. Snarling, she twisted, managing to sink her teeth into his flank. With a pained howl, he recoiled, giving her the chance to scramble back to her feet. Ignoring the throbbing in her shoulder, she returned her attention to the central duel. An unnatural stillness had settled around Kalen and her father, the other wolves instinctively clearing a space. They circled, two titans poised for the final blow. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. She had never witnessed such vulnerability in her father's stance. "Theron," Kalen's voice, a low rumble that carried across the din, sliced through the air. "Surrender. This bloodshed serves no purpose." Her father straightened, his silver fur matted with crimson, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Honor? You speak of honor, Blackwood? You who despoil our lands, pilfer our resources, and butcher our brethren?" "I secure my pack's survival," Kalen countered, his tone hardening. "You have grown feeble, Theron. Your time is over." "Never," her father bellowed, lunging at Kalen. The collision was a devastating explosion of muscle and fury. Anya watched, petrified, as they ripped and clawed. Despite his age, her father fought with the savage desperation of a cornered animal. But Kalen possessed a younger, stronger frame, coupled with a chilling, calculated brutality. Then, the fatal moment. A shadow of hesitation flickered in her father's gaze, a split-second lapse that Kalen exploited with deadly precision. A swift, brutal attack to the throat. Anya gasped. A strangled sound ripped from her chest. Her father stumbled back, clutching his neck. Blood pulsed between his fingers, turning his silver coat a sickening red. He looked at Anya, his eyes filled with a haunting mixture of pain and regret. Kalen stood over him, chest heaving, his own pelt bearing the marks of battle. But his eyes held a peculiar intensity, a flicker of something Anya couldn't comprehend. Theron Silverstream, Alpha of the Silverstream pack, the leader of decades, crumpled to the earth, his eyes glazed over, his body still. Anya screamed, a primal wail of anguish and fury that reverberated across the ravaged clearing. She hurled herself at Kalen, heedless of the danger, her grief overriding any semblance of reason. "You!" she shrieked, her voice raw with torment. "You monster! I will end you!" Kalen remained motionless, unblinking. He simply watched her approach, his expression inscrutable. As she closed the distance, 2 Blackwood wolves intercepted her, teeth bared in stark warning. She fought with a desperate, frantic energy, but weakened, wounded, and outnumbered, she was easily subdued. Forced to the ground, she thrashed against their hold, her gaze locked on Kalen. "Release me!" she screamed. "Release me, you craven!" Kalen approached slowly, his gaze unwavering. He knelt beside her, radiating power and menace. "Silence," he commanded, his voice a low, commanding growl. "The conflict is concluded." "Concluded?" Anya spat, her voice dripping with venom. "It ends only when you are dead." Kalen ignored her outburst. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. She flinched, bracing for a blow, but instead, his fingers gently brushed a stray lock of fur from her eyes. "You will accompany me," he stated, his voice softening, almost gentle. "You will be secure." "Secure?" Anya laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You murdered my father. You annihilated my pack. How can I ever be safe with you?" "Your pack is extinguished," Kalen said, his voice devoid of inflection. "And your father, he charted his own course." "Course?" Anya cried. "He chose to defend his people. He chose to fight for what was rightfully his." "He chose to resist," Kalen countered, his voice regaining its hard edge. "Now, you will come willingly or by force. The choice rests with you." Anya stared at him, her eyes brimming with hate and despair. She knew resistance was pointless. A death wish. The Blackwood pack had triumphed. Her pack was shattered. Her father was gone. And she was at the mercy of the wolf who had robbed her of everything. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. "Do as you wish," she whispered, her voice broken. Kalen nodded to his warriors. They released her, remaining close, their eyes vigilant. He extended a hand toward her. Anya recoiled, shrinking away from his touch. "Don't," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Don't touch me." Kalen hesitated, then withdrew his hand. He rose, his gaze sweeping across the carnage. The Blackwood wolves were corralling the surviving Silverstream members, their expressions grim. The glade, once a sanctuary, was now a tableau of desolation. He turned back to Anya, his eyes filled with a perplexing blend of triumph and something else, something akin to regret. "Come," he said, his voice low. "There is nothing left for you here." Anya rose slowly, her legs shaky, her body numb. She glanced at the lifeless form of her father, lying still in the blood-soaked earth. A sob tore from her throat. She turned away, unable to endure the sight any longer. She followed Kalen into the heart of the Blackwood pack, a captive in enemy territory, her spiritory, consumed by grief, rage, and an overwhelming sense of bereavement. The Silverstream's downfall was absolute, and Anya Silverstream, daughter of a fallen Alpha, was utterly alone, or so it seemed. As she turned to leave, Anya noticed Kalen fixedly staring back at her. The intensity of his gaze was unsettling as she wondered what he was thinking. Her captor? Her enemy? Or something more? Time alone would reveal the truth. Prisoner of war, daughter of the pack, the very air changed as they breached the invisible threshold. A denser aroma of pine and loam wrapping around them, laced with a feral tang that spoke of untamed dominion. Blackwood, shackled and flanked by two immense wolves, Anya felt the shift deep in her marrow, a vibration of power emanating from the very ground. Here, trees clawed at the sky, their trunks thick with age, their boughs reflecting the brutal strength of the pack they sheltered. Silverstream had been a realm of dancing light, rushing waters. This was a domain of lurking shadows and buried secrets. As the group descended into the territory's heart, a warren of structures etched into the mountainside, the Blackwood pack materialized, wolves of every size and hue. Suspicion hardening their gazes, encircled the returning party. A magnificent, intimidating display of muscle rippling beneath fur. Their silence was a stark warning. Anya met their stares head-on, refusing to betray prey. Her fear, though her pulse thundered in her chest, she wouldn't offer them that satisfaction. Astride a colossal wolf whose obsidian coat seemed to swallow light, Kalen surveyed the tableau. His expression was an impassive mask, betraying nothing of his thoughts. He dismounted with a lithe grace that belied his bulk, and the huge wolf morphed into Torin, his second. Torin's gaze, like honed steel, swept over Anya, assessing, calculating. "Alpha?" he rumbled, his voice laced with respect. "The pack is restless." Kalen gave a curt nod. "They will adapt. She is under my protection." The reassurance carried a sharp undercurrent, a clear dare to any who would question his authority or her audacity. They guided her toward a crudely fashioned building, undoubtedly a holding cell. The air inside was heavy with lupine musk, a primal, choking scent that roiled her stomach. Thick timbers, banded with iron, formed the walls. A lone barred aperture offered a stolen glimpse of the world outside, a world now beyond her reach. Her captors released her, and she staggered, her limbs unsteady after the long trek. She caught herself against the rough wall, her palm rasping against splintered wood. Kalen observed her, eyes narrowed, yet offered no assistance. "You will be secure here," he stated, his voice flat. "Secure?" Anya spat the word like poison. "I am your prisoner. You are under my protection," he repeated, the words a bulwark. "There is a distinction." "Is there?" She raised her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. "My father is dead. My pack scattered. My home gone. All because of you." A fleeting shadow regret, perhaps, crossed his features, vanishing so quickly she questioned its existence. "Your father chose his course, as did your pack. They chose to defend what was theirs," she snapped, her voice trembling with contained fury. "They chose loyalty, something you appear to know nothing about." Kalen's jaw clenched. "Do not pretend to understand me, Anya Silverstream. You know nothing of the burdens I bear." He turned to leave, his broad frame filling the doorway. "Food and water will be provided. No harm will come to you." And with that, he vanished, leaving Anya alone in the crushing silence of her confinement. She slid to the floor, bracing herself against the cold, clammy wall. Grief crashed over her, a suffocating wave threatening to drown her. Her father, her pack, her life, all stolen, all taken by him. Yet beneath the despair, a flicker ignited, a spark of defiance, a refusal to yield. She wouldn't let him witness her despair. She wouldn't let him break her. She would endure. She would find a way to avenge her father and reclaim her birthright. Hours blurred into a seamless stretch. The only sounds were the sigh of wind through the boughs and the distant lament of a lone wolf. Anya refused the sustenance offered, her stomach churning with a blend of fury and grief. Let them believe her weakened. Let them underestimate her resolve. As night descended, she heard approaching footsteps. Torrhen stood at the bars, his expression somber. "You must eat, Anya Silverstream," he urged, his tone surprisingly gentle. "Starving yourself serves no purpose." "Why this concern?" she challenged, her voice raspy. "You are Blackwood. You are my enemy." "My allegiance belongs to my Alpha," he stated, his gaze unwavering. "But that does not preclude compassion. Your father was a strong leader. His loss diminishes all wolves." Anya stared, taken aback by his words. "You respected him." "I did," Torrhen conceded. "We were rivals, yet shared a common cause, the survival of our people." He paused, a note of solemnity in his voice. "Kalen acted as he deemed necessary." "Necessary?" Anya scoffed. "To butcher innocent wolves? To shatter a family?" "There are complexities you are unaware of," Torrhen murmured, his voice low. "Kalen bears a heavy responsibility. He acts as he must to safeguard his own." "And what of my pack?" Anya pressed, her voice laced with accusation. "Who will safeguard them now?" Torrhen's expression softened. "That rests with you, Anya Silverstream. You are Theron's daughter. You carry his strength within you." He slid a tray of food through the bars. "Eat. Rest. You will require your strength for the trials ahead." Then he departed, leaving Anya alone with her swirling thoughts. Torrhen's words echoed in her mind. "You are Theron's daughter." That was truth. She was Silverstream, and she would not be broken. She would find a path to survival, and she would make Kalen Blackwood answer for his crimes. Yet a tiny seed of doubt had taken root. Was Kalen truly a monster? Or was he a far more complex figure, a leader weighed down by impossible choices? Only time would reveal the truth. But one thing remained certain. Her path would be fraught with peril, and she would need to tread carefully if she hoped to see the dawn. The unbreakable bond, the air in the Blackwood pack hall crackled, an invisible current tightening around Anya's throat like a frayed rope. The rough stone architecture, smelling of loam and distant fires, formed a vast chamber that amplified every nervous breath. Flickering torchlight contorted the Blackwood wolves' faces into grotesque masks as they awaited their alpha's decree. Anya, a solitary figure at the periphery, hugged herself against the chill, her borrowed garments a scarlet letter branding her a captive of war. When Kalen ascended the dais, the room hushed. He possessed a predator's grace, each movement a testament to contained power. His sable fur shimmered like polished obsidian as his gaze, sharp and unwavering, scanned the assembled pack. Anya's breath hitched. His voice, a low thrum that resonated deep within her chest, shattered the silence. "Blackwood," he announced, his tone devoid of all emotion. "The Silverstream has fallen. Their territory is ours, their resources now under our control." A ripple of reaction, a blend of triumph and unease, spread through the prad. "Ranks." Anya's hands clenched into fists, nails biting crescents into her skin. She met Kalen's stare head-on, defiance blazing in her gaze. He spoke of strategy, of solidifying their dominion, of fortifying borders against neighboring packs, painting a future ripped from her grasp, from her people. Seraphina, the pack's healer, stood poised near the front, her expression an unreadable mask. Her silver hair, laced with ebony beads, framed a face of keen intelligence. Anya had observed her interactions with Kalen, noting the subtle proprietary touches, the lingering proximity, As Kalen outlined the redistribution of lands, his gaze swept the assembly, seemingly at random, until it snagged on Anya. The world narrowed, the murmuring crowd fading to background noise. An electric shock, unexpected and intense, jolted through her. A silent gasp escaped her. Kalen's countenance shifted. Surprise, then a flicker of recognition? His jaw hardened, tension radiating from him. The air vibrated with unseen forces, a palpable wave washing over Anya. It defied explanation, this overwhelming sense of connection. No? Something more fundamental, more instinctual. Around them, the pack stirred, their whispers fading into stunned silence. Heads swiveled, eyes widened. They sensed it too, the undeniable magnetism, the unbreakable link forged in that moment. The scent of pine and storm, uniquely Kalen's, intensified, threatening to overwhelm her senses. Torin, positioned to Kalen's left, drew a sharp breath, his gaze ricocheting between his Alpha and the Silverstream prisoner. His face reflected stunned disbelief. He understood the implications. They all did. A low growl, possessive and laced with barely suppressed fury, vibrated in Kalen's throat. He broke the connection, wrenching his gaze from Anya as if burned by the contact. His knuckles turned bone white as he gripped the dais. "That is all," he declared, his voice strained, barely audible. "Dismissed." The pack dissolved, the stunned hush giving way to frantic, hushed conversations. They averted their eyes from Anya, their faces a mixture of awe and trepidation. The implications of what they'd witnessed could shatter their world. Seraphina approached Kalen, extending a hand. "Kalen, are you well? You seem." He recoiled from her touch, his eyes still fixed on the space Anya had occupied. "I am fine," he snapped, his tone rough. "Leave me." Seraphina's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger quickly masked by a veil of concern. "Of course, Alpha. As you command." She cast a venomous glance toward Anya before gliding away, her movements fluid, yet radiating suppressed rage. Anya remained rooted to the spot, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, her mind in chaos. What just occurred? The bond. She had heard the old stories, the legends of destined mates, tales whispered to comfort the lonely. She had dismissed them as myth, until now. She was bound to the wolf who murdered her father, annihilated her pack. Her enemy. Torin approached her tentatively, his expression a study in pity and unease. "Anya," he murmured, "come with me. This isn't safe for you right now." She allowed him to guide her away, her limbs heavy, unresponsive. Resistance was futile, words deserted her. She was too overwhelmed, too stunned. The bond. She was fated to her enemy. As they walked, Anya finally found her voice. A rasped whisper. "What does this signify?" Torin sighed, his shoulders slumping. "It changes everything, Anya, everything." He halted before her cell, unlocking the door with a defeated sigh. "For better or worse." He left her alone in the suffocating darkness, the weight of his words a crushing burden. She crumpled to the floor, burying her face in her hands. Vengeance. Devotion. These conflicting desires waged war within her, tearing at her very soul. How could she reconcile her burning need for retribution with the undeniable allure of the mate bond? Was it possible to simultaneously hate and love someone with such intensity? Anya gazed up at the barred window, the moon casting stark skeletal shadows across the stone floor. The unbreakable bond. She realized then that it wasn't just a connection, it was a prison. She was tethered to Kalen, whether she willed it or not. And that realization ignited a terror unlike any she had ever known. A forbidden truth, the reek of triumph, a cloying blend of evergreen and spilled blood, clung to Anya like grave clothes. Kalen's presence, now irrevocably imprinted on her, festered beneath, a constant, sickening reminder of her defeat. She curled up in a corner of what had been her father's sanctuary, the study now an echoing void save for a crude wooden chair and the anemic glow of a single candle. The Blackwood pack had offered no solace to their captive. Her fingers absently traced a dent in the wall, a legacy of one of her father's fiery disagreements with a neighboring Alpha. He had ruled with strength and fierce devotion to Silverstream. The echo of his booming laughter reverberated in her mind, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence. She could almost feel the phantom weight of his hand on her shoulder, his voice, a warm balm, guiding her path. Family above all, Anya, always. Now, family was a ghost. Pack, a scattering of refugees. Everything, stolen by the wolf whose scent now violated her senses. A primal claim she yearned to reject. A sob, raw and guttural, tore free. How could fate inflict such torment? To chain her to the architect of her ruin. To compel her to crave the touch of the hand that wielded the fatal blow against her father. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to banish the image of Kalen, the hungry intensity in his dark gaze during the announcement, the possessive angle of his head. His victory was palpable, his power undeniable, and the pull between them a tangible thing. The bond, a conflagration neither could ignore, had been laid bare before both packs, a glaring, unavoidable truth. Fragments of memory surfaced. Her father's final stand. She hadn't been there to witness his last moments, she'd been commanding a defense on the eastern border. But the aftermath, the tales of Kalen's onslaught, the brutal efficiency with which he'd shattered Silverstream's lines, the personal challenge issued to her father. He fought with valor. A surviving warrior had whispered, grief choking his voice. But Kalen, he was a force of nature. Unyielding. Unyielding. The word resonated, now describing not just Kalen's might, but the relentless tug of the bond itself. Was she fated to become another victim of his supremacy? Another shattered remnant left in his wake? She pushed to her feet, pacing the confines of her prison like a trapped animal. Revenge. The word tasted like poison, a smoldering ember in her core. She could strategize, conspire, discover a method to retaliate against Kalen, to avenge her father and her pack. Difficult, hazardous, perhaps suicidal. But the prospect offered a spark of warmth in the encompassing darkness. But then, the bond tugged, a subtle yet insistent vibration that resonated in her very bones. It whispered of might, of security, of kinship. It promised a connection so profound, so consuming, that it could drown the pain, the loss, the malice. Could she desecrate her father's memory by embracing this bond? Could she possibly forgive the unforgivable? Could she reconcile her obligation to her pack with the undeniable truth of her connection to their destroyer? She halted, breath hitching. This wasn't merely about her personal vendetta. The Silverstream survivors were dispersed, shattered, defenseless. If she could somehow leverage this bond, this curse, to safeguard them, to guarantee their survival, would it be treachery or selflessness? Questions buffeted her mind, a maelstrom of doubt and despair. She sank back into the chair, burying her face in her hands, hopelessly ensnared between impossible choices. Later, under the moon's austere gaze, long shadows painting the room, a soft scratching at the door cut through the silence. She flinched, heart hammering. A guard? An inquisitor? Or Kalen? She rose gingerly, hand trembling as she grasped the makeshift dagger fashioned from a shard of broken glass, concealing it in the folds of her ragged dress. "Who is it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. A deep voice, Kalen's unmistakable timbre, rumbled beyond the door. Anya. Just her name, spoken with an odd blend of command and something indefinable. She inhaled deeply, attempting to quell her racing pulse. This was it, the reckoning. She could refuse him, defy him, risk his fury. Or she could unlock the door and confront the wolf who was both her nemesis and, unfathomably, her mate. With a final burst of defiance, she swung the door open. Kalen filled the frame, his imposing physique dominating the space. He was larger, more imposing than she remembered from the battlefield. The lingering scent of evergreen and gore still clung to him, but beneath it she perceived an undercurrent, something uniquely his. A scent that both repelled and beckoned. A dangerous blend of threat and something akin to solace. His dark eyes, the source of her torment, locked onto hers, brimming with an intensity that stole her breath. He remained silent, motionless. He simply observed her, waited. She met his gaze, her own a tempest of fury, apprehension, and a reluctant, unwelcome curiosity. "What do you want?" she managed, her voice trembling slightly. Kalen broke the silence, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through her. "To talk," Anya scoffed, a harsh sound in the stillness. "Talk? After what you've wrought? After everything you've taken?" "I know this is difficult," he conceded, his expression unreadable. "But we need to find some understanding." "Understanding?" she echoed, incredulous. "There is nothing to understand. You annihilated my pack. You murdered my father. You are my enemy." Kalen's gaze hardened into obsidian. "I did what was necessary. Your father would have done the same. Don't you dare utter his name," Anya spat, clutching the hidden dagger. He advanced, his presence suffocating. "Anya," he said, his voice losing some of its harsh edge. "We are bound. Whether you accept it or not, we are connected. We need to find a way to coexist." Coexist? The word was ludicrous, a cruel jest. Yet, as she searched his eyes, she glimpsed something beyond the ruthless warrior. A flicker of vulnerability. For the first time, it dawned on her that Kalen wasn't just her adversary, but a wolf burdened by his own responsibilities, his own history. He was a leader, a protector, a survivor, just as she was. And in that instant, a sliver of doubt found purchase in her heart. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to this tale than she perceived. Perhaps a dangerous truth lay concealed beneath the layers of hatred and revenge. A truth that could either shatter her or redeem her. Burden of the Alpha, the lingering trace of Anya, perfumed his study. A stubborn sprig of lavender amidst the deep, loma-tinged air of aged oak and worn leather, the room's usual essence. At the window stood Kalen, the taut lines of his shoulders visible even beneath his finely spun tunic. The Blackwood domain unfurled before him, a panorama of shadowed woods and silvered river under the waning moon, his by conquest. Yet the victory tasted like ash, poisoned by the irrefutable truth of the mating bond. "She's secure," Torin reported, his tone hushed and respectful, disrupting the stillness. He remained just inside the threshold, his normally buoyant mien shadowed by concern. "Guards are stationed, as instructed. No aggressive actions thus far." A grunt was Kalen's sole response, his back still turned. Aggression isn't their way. She's Silverstream. Subtlety is their weapon, like moon ghosts flitting through the trees. She grieves, Alpha. A note of empathy colored Torin's voice, a sentiment Kalen either didn't share or couldn't afford. I overheard her, she called out for her sire. Kalen's jaw tightened. He recalled the silver-furred wolf, pride unbowed even as Kalen's fangs met his throat. The kill had been necessary. A calculated strike to shatter the Silverstream's resolve. Anya, however, had been unforeseen, that wrenching, electrifying pull that had seized him the instant their eyes locked across the crimson-stained clearing. Grief is a privilege she forfeited, Kalen stated, his voice devoid of inflection. She's a war captive, Torin. And, potentially, far more. Torin advanced further, his gaze steady. The bond alters everything, Alpha. You understand. It possesses sanctity. Kalen finally pivoted, his eyes, usually the warm umber of fertile soil, now gleaming with a frigid amber light. Sanctity? The Silverstream harried our borders, plundered our stores, and challenged our sovereignty for generations. My father perished fighting their Alpha. And now you invoke sacred bonds? But she's your destined mate, Kalen, Torin pressed, his voice unwavering. Rejecting the bondi, it weakens you, diminishes the pack. Ancient laws dictate this. Kalen knew them intimately. A severed bond could cripple an Alpha, leaving him exposed, a target for both internal challenges and external aggression. He had witnessed such a decline, the slow unraveling of an Alpha who spurned his true mate. The pack withered, the territory shrank, and anarchy prevailed. She also bears the blood of my nemesis, Kalen retorted, his voice a low growl. Silverstream to her core, nurtured on animosity and vengeance. Where lies the trust? Can you truly dismiss it, Alpha? Torin countered, his stare penetrating. The bondi, it's a connecting thread. A slender chance to knit together these warring factions, to end decades of conflict, or a force capable of consuming us all. Kalen faced the window once more, his vision fixed on the distant horizon. He sensed Anya, a subtle vibration beneath his skin, a constant echo of her presence. He envisioned her confined to the guest chamber's a gilded cage, pacing like a hunted creature. He knew her strength, her resilience. He had glimpsed it in her eyes, the smoldering embers that persisted even as she witnessed her father's demise. He had commanded his guards to observe her meticulously, to document her every action. He needed to decipher her, to anticipate her next move. Was she plotting retribution? Seeking a chink in his armor? Or was she, perhaps, as bewildered and frightened as he? He recalled her expression when the bond slammed into place, the shock, the incredulity, the burgeoning horror. It mirrored his own. He had braced himself for fury, resistance, perhaps even a self-destructive assault. But he had seen something else, a fleeting recognition, a primeval awareness that transcended their long-standing feud. He had dismissed it then, attributing it to the chaos of the moment, but the memory lingered, a persistent whisper in the depths of his mind. He contemplated his pack, the warriors who had followed him into battle, the families who relied on him for protection. He had guided them to triumph, secured their future. But at what cost? And could he truly ensure their prosperity if he severed the bond? If he permitted his personal antipathy to imperil the pack's stability? "Leave me, Torin," Kalen requested, his voice burdened. "I require solitude." Torin inclined his head and withdrew. leaving Kalen alone with his inner turmoil. The moon ascended higher, painting elongated, grotesque shadows across the floor. Kalen closed his eyes, attempting to quell the clamor, the discord, the conflicting emotions threatening to engulf him. He saw Anya's features, her silver eyes blazing with defiance, her lips pressed into a resolute line. He saw her father, the Silverstream Alpha, lifeless at his feet. He saw his own father, felled by a Silverstream raiding party when Kalen was just a boy. He opened his eyes, his breath ragged. The weight of leadership pressed down on him, a crushing burden threatening to suffocate him. He was Alpha, accountable for the welfare of his pack. He had to choose a decision that would define the destiny of his people. But how could he reconcile obligation with longing, vengeance with absolution? How could he place his trust in a woman sworn to despise him, a woman who was his adversary, his prisoner, his destined mate? He moved to the table, his hand hovering over the map unfurled upon its surface. The Blackwood territory was delineated in thick strokes of ebony ink, the Silverstream territory in shimmering silver, two distinct entities, separated by a protracted and brutal history. But now, a single, invisible thread connected them, a bond that defied reason, a nexus that could either unify them or annihilate them. And Kalen, Alpha of the Blackwood pack, was caught within, torn between the past and the future, between duty and his heart. He raked a hand through his hair, his fingers becoming ensnared in the thick strands. He felt Anya's presence, a faint yet unwavering pull, a reminder that she was there, waiting, observing. He realized he couldn't disregard her, couldn't feign ignorance of the bond's existence. He had to confront her, to comprehend her, to decide her fate. But as he stood there, isolated in his study, bathed in the moon's cold light, he couldn't shake the premonition that he was not in control, that he was being manipulated by forces beyond his comprehension, and that Anya, the Silverstream she-wolf, was the key to unlocking the enigma. The following morning, Kalen found himself drawn to the training grounds. It was an unconscious drive, a yearning to feel the familiar heft of a sword in his grasp, the unwavering earth beneath his boots. The air possessed a sharp bite, the scent of pine and damp earth filling his lungs. He observed his warriors sparring, their movements flowing and precise, honed by years of practice. He saw their allegiance, their power, their steadfast faith in him. And he questioned whether that faith would endure should he embrace the bond, should he usher a Silverstream into their midst. He spotted Anya standing at the edge of the training grounds, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. She was scrutinizing the warriors, her silver gaze narrowed, assessing their strengths and vulnerabilities. She looked dissonant, a silver shadow among the black, an unwelcome intrusion. He began walking towards her, his steps measured, his stare unwavering. He could feel the weight of his warriors' gazes upon him, watching, waiting. He knew their curiosity, their unease, perhaps even their resentment. He halted a few feet from Anya, his presence encroaching upon her space. She neither flinched nor retreated. She met his gaze head-on, her eyes icy and challenging. "What do you desire?" she inquired, her voice low and steady. He didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, scrutinizing her, attempting to decipher the emotions concealed behind her stoic exterior. He saw grief, anger, resentment, but he also saw something else, a spark of defiance, a refusal to be broken. "I wish to comprehend you," he stated finally, his voice gentle yet firm. "I seek to know your thoughts, Your plans. Anya laughed, a rasping, mirthless sound. You think you can understand me? You extinguished my father, decimated my pack. There is nothing to understand. There is the bond, Kalen countered, his gaze unwavering. A connection that transcends our animosity. Anya's expression hardened. The bond is a blight, a cruel jest orchestrated by the moon goddess. I desire no part of it. Can you honestly deny its existence, Anya? Kalen challenged. The gilded cage granite-faced guards steered Anya down endless corridors. Torches guttered, their light painting the tapestry-draped walls with illustrations of Blackwood dominance, a silent, boastful chronicle. Her stomach tightened. Shoulders squared, eyes forward, she refused to yield to weakness. They halted before a formidable oak door, its surface a canvas of intricate carvings. A scarred brute of a guard, a jagged line severing his left eye, unlocked it. With a resonant groan, the barrier yielded. Your chamber, Silverstream, he intoned, his voice a flat drone, the accompanying sneer blatant. Anya crossed the threshold into extravagance. It was a world removed from the rustic simplicity of Silverstream. The room was anchored by a four-poster bed, swathed in sumptuous velvet. In the hearth, a blaze crackled, large enough to consume a small animal. Deep-hued rugs silenced the stone floor. A writing desk sat poised beneath a window overlooking the training grounds, a vibrant tableau of Blackwood warriors locked in fierce practice. A gilded cage, indeed. The door thudded shut, sealing her isolation. Gingerly, Anya stepped onto the yielding rug. She brushed her fingers across the satiny surface of a mahogany table, the sensation foreign and unsettling. Every object here radiated affluence, authority, control. A calculated display, a persistent reminder of her captivity and Kalen's triumph. Drawn to the window, she watched the Blackwood warriors move with savage fluidity, each blow precise, lethal. Perfected instruments, blindly loyal. How many, she wondered, had butchered her pack? A wave of nausea threatened. Digging her nails into her palms, she quelled the rising tide of grief and fury. Turning, Anya began a systematic survey of her gilded prison. She opened drawers overflowing with exquisite linens and elaborately stitched clothing. A vanity offered an array of unfamiliar perfumes and cosmetics, all utterly superfluous. She wasn't here to adorn herself, survival was the goal. In a shattered corner, she found a small library, shelves lined with leather-bound volumes. Her pulse quickened. Always a fervent reader, she'd sought sanctuary and insight within the pages of stories. She traced the spines, seeking something familiar, a tether to her former self. She selected a book on herbal lore, tracing the delicate illustrations of medicinal plants. Perhaps this could serve a purpose. Even in confinement, knowledge held sway. Hours melted away as she studied the book, committing to memory the properties, applications, and hazards of various herbs. The fire whispered and popped, drawing elongated shadows across the chamber. The sheer luxury pressed upon her like a weight. She longed for the scent of pine and damp earth, the caress of the wind, the unbridled freedom of the forest. Surrounded by such finery, she felt profoundly alone, lost in a sea of silk and gold. A rap echoed through the chamber, startling her. She snapped the book shut, heart hammering. "Who is it?" she managed, her voice a bare thread. "Kalen," came the deep, booming response. Anya's breath hitched. Kalen, a name seared into her memory, a constant echo of devastation. "Enter," she said, her voice betraying a slight tremor. The door swung open, and Kalen filled the aperture. His presence was even more commanding than she recalled. His broad frame stretching the fabric of his tunic, his dark gaze sharp and penetrating. An innate authority radiated from him like heat. He entered, his eyes scanning the room, absorbing every detail before settling on her. "Are you comfortable?" he asked, his tone surprisingly subdued. Anya scoffed, a derisive sound. "Comfortable? Within my enemy's domain? Surrounded by the spoils plundered from my people?" His expression remained impassive. "This is not intended as a prison, Anya. It is a refuge." "Refuge?" she echoed, the word laced with scorn. "You decimate my family, obliterate my home, and then extend me refuge. Do you truly believe me so easily beguiled?" "I do not anticipate your trust," he replied, his voice low. "But I hope, in time, you will comprehend my motivations." "Comprehend? You expect me to grasp your reasoning for murdering my father." Anya advanced a step, her eyes blazing. "There exists no rationale, Kalen. You are a monster." His jaw tightened, yet he remained silent, his gaze unwavering. "Your father possessed strength," he stated finally, but lacked the capacity for compromise. His inflexibility sealed his demise. "And my pack?" Anya demanded. Were they also too intractable? Did they warrant slaughter? "Casualties occurred on both sides," Kalen said, his tone carefully modulated. "This conflict has raged for generations. It was time to bring it to a close." "And you elected to conclude it by extinguishing the Silverstream line?" Anya spat, her voice thick with venom. "I presented your father with terms," Kalen replied, his voice gaining an edge. "He refused. He embraced war. He elected his fate." "And what avenue remained to me?" Anya challenged, closing the distance between them. "You left me with nothing. You deprived me of all I held dear." Kalen's eyes darkened, like a storm gathering. "A choice remains to you now, Anya. You may opt to wallow in the past, to pursue vengeance, or you may choose to embrace what lies ahead. Our shared path." Anya recoiled, as if struck physically. "Our shared path? You genuinely believe that feasible, in the wake of such devastation?" "The bond cannot be denied," Kalen said, his voice softening, almost pleading. "We are destined, Anya. We may either resist it or accept its truth." "Accept it?" Anya laughed, a hollow sound devoid of mirth. "You anticipate my acceptance of being bound to the man who shattered my existence?" "I ask you to entertain the possibility," Kalen pressed, his gaze intense. "To transcend the anguish and envision what could unfold." Anya stared intently, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. She glimpsed a flicker within his depths, a hint of vulnerability she'd not anticipated. Could it be possible? Could anything exist beyond the hatred, beyond retribution? "I require time," she whispered at last, her voice barely audible. "I require time to think." Kalen offered a measured nod. "I understand. I will grant you the time you seek." He paused, his gaze lingering upon her face. "However, do not tarry too long, Anya. Time is a luxury we can ill afford." With this, he turned and quit the chamber, leaving Anya once again alone. The fire crackled, the shadows performed their macabre dance, and the gilded cage felt more oppressive than before. His scent hung in the air, a potent cocktail of power and something elusive, something she struggled to name. She was ensnared, not merely within a luxurious prison, but in a web of fate, entwined with the very man who had obliterated her world. And she couldn't discern which prospect inspired greater dread. Whispers in the shadows, the reek of resin and sodden leaves saturated the air as Anya skirted the Blackwood territory's edge. Kalen's allowance was a restricted one, a gilded cage perhaps, but liberation of a sort. She feigned exploration, mapping the terrain, noting potential exits. In truth, she was eavesdropping. Moving with feline grace honed by her Silverstream upbringing, despite the ache in her soul, Anya caught fragments of conversation carried on the breeze. Near the training ring, a cluster of younger wolves spoke in low tones. "Did you see her?" a young vixen with a fox-colored pelt queried. "At the Alpha's side during supper?" As if she belonged. "Belonged?" came a derisive snort. "She's Silverstream. They decimated our patrols for years." "Kalen certainly acts as if she does," a third, more hesitant voice ventured. "He hasn't exactly refuted the rumors, has he?" Anya edged closer, her breath caught in her throat. "Rumors, naturally. What else would occupy their minds? The last of the Silverstream, dwelling within the Blackwood lair, treated like what? A cherished guest? A valuable hostage? A pampered trinket? It's perverse," the russet wolf insisted. "He eviscerated her father. I witnessed it. A swift strike to the heart. How can he just disregard it?" The deeper voice returned. "Perhaps he hasn't. Perhaps he's plotting something. Kalen always has ulterior motives." Anya recoiled, the words like shards of ice piercing her skin. She recognized she was an outsider, an aberration, but overhearing it articulated with such frigidity deepened the chasm of isolation that consumed her. Later, drawing near the healing enclosure, she discerned Seraphina's voice, coated in a saccharine sweetness that instantly raised Anya's hackles. "Torin, my dear, are you certain the Alpha is sound? He appears preoccupied lately. Not quite himself." Torin's grumbled response was indistinct, but Anya parsed its meaning. "He's fine, Seraphina, just occupied with matters." Seraphina's brittle laughter echoed like shattering glass. "Occupied with matters? Or occupied with her?" Anya paused behind a gnarled oak, her senses heightened. "Don't start, Seraphina," Torin warned, his tone hardening. "You know Kalen charts his own course." "Oh, I'm aware," Seraphina purred. "But are they judicious courses? Ushering a serpent into the fold? She's Silverstream, Torin. Blood will tell. What if she's merely biding her time?" "Kalen can control her," Torin asserted, with a conviction that rang hollow, even to Anya's ears. "He knows precisely what he's doing. Does he now?" Seraphina's voice oozed skepticism. "Or is he swayed by something more visceral?" Anya's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. She yearned to confront Seraphina, to demand clarification, but she restrained herself. This wasn't open warfare. It was a subtle game of manipulation, and she needed to grasp the rules before engaging. That evening, during the communal repast, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken animosity. Anya sat adjacent to Kalen, as she had each evening since her arrival, but tonight, the weight of the pack's gazes felt heavier, more condemnatory. She toyed with her meal, the roasted rabbit suddenly devoid of flavor. Kalen, beside her, seemed detached, engrossed in a discussion with Torin about boundary patrols. Yet Anya sensed his awareness, a submerged current of energy that vibrated against her skin. Abruptly, A fledgling wolf, scarcely out of puphood, approached Kalen hesitantly. "Alpha," he stammered. I overheard that the patrols near the southern fringe are overextended. Should we reassign some warriors?" Kalen nodded, his expression pensive. "A worthwhile suggestion. Torin, attend to it." The young wolf lingered, his eyes darting furtively toward Anya. "Alpha," he pressed, his voice barely audible. Are you certain it's prudent to confide in her?" "She's Silverstream." A hush descended over the clearing. Every eye fixed on Kalen, awaiting his reaction. Anya held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Kalen's gaze flickered toward Anya, a fleeting, indecipherable expression in his eyes. Then he addressed the young wolf, his tone composed but resolute. "Allegiance is earned, not inherited. Anya is under my protection. Disrespect toward her is disrespect toward me." The young wolf flinched, his face paling. "Yes, Alpha. Forgive me, Alpha." He scurried away, vanishing into the throng. The tension in the clearing lingered, thick and suffocating. Anya met Kalen's gaze, seeking answers, for some hint of understanding. But his eyes resembled polished stone, reflecting nothing back. Later, as they returned to his den, Anya shattered the silence. "They mistrust me," she stated, voicing the obvious. Kalen halted, pivoting to face her. The moonlight illuminated his features, accentuating the sharp planes of his face and the intensity of his gaze. "Trust is acquired," he reiterated, echoing his earlier pronouncement. "How am I supposed to earn their trust?" Anya countered, her voice tinged with exasperation. "When they perceive me as nothing more than the progeny of their adversary." Kalen closed the distance between them, his presence imposing. "By proving their assumptions wrong." "How?" Anya challenged, tilting her chin upward to meet his eyes. "By betraying my own lineage?" Kalen's expression hardened, becoming flint-like. "By prioritizing your future above your past grievances." His words hung in the night air, laden with significance. Anya discerned his unspoken request, his implied demand. He wanted her to relinquish her sorrow, her bitterness, her yearning for retribution. He wanted her to embrace a future with him, within the Blackwood pack. But could she? Could she genuinely betray her father's memory? Could she bring herself to forgive the one who had extinguished her old life? As she peered into Kalen's dark eyes, she understood that any easy answer was impossible, and that the whispers lurking in the shadows would only intensify. A bridge of words, the air in Anya's chamber was thick with unspoken accusations, a palpable tension clinging to the bare stone. Sunlight, a lone blade, bisected the room, illuminating dancing dust motes and the stark simplicity that screamed imprisonment. This Spartan cell was a far cry from the opulent vibrancy of her father's halls. Kalen stood by the small table, his imposing presence shrinking the already meager space. Silence had been his only weapon since entering. A heavy, suffocating blanket. A subtle shift brought the forest to her nostrils, the clean tang of pine overlaid by something feral, the scent of churned earth after a lightning strike, an aroma she simultaneously detested and, to her dismay, found, quote, "compelling." "This isn't exactly your usual surroundings," he finally rumbled, the sound resonating in the confined space. His stormy eyes locked onto hers. Perched on the edge of the bed, Anya straightened her spine. "You obliterated everything familiar." The words, sharper than intended, dripped with bottled venom. He absorbed the blow without a flinch, offering no expected platitudes. Instead, a sigh, burdened with a weight that mirrored her own, escaped his lips. "There's a context you lack, Anya." "Then enlighten me," she challenged, her voice barely audible. "Why the slaughter of my pack? Why the death of my father?" Kalen closed the distance between them, halting just beyond arm's reach. His upturned palms offered a truce, a gesture strangely at odds with his alpha persona. "Forgiveness is a bridge too far, I know, perhaps forever. But I need you to understand, or at least try." He settled into the chair across from the table, a deliberate, unhurried motion. He indicated the opposite seat. After a moment's hesitation, Anya rose and took it, her gaze unwavering. "Before I was Alpha," he began, his gaze falling to his hands, "I was simply a wolf, scrabbling for my place. My father, the then Alpha, ruled with an iron fist. Might made right in his eyes, and he pursued territory expansion without conscience. I often balked at his methods, but duty and tradition held me fast." He paused, searching for the right words. "A drought ravaged the land. Rivers turned to dust. Game disappeared. Starvation gnawed at our pack's belly. My father dispatched raiding parties into the Silverstream lands, claiming it was a necessity for survival. I argued, pleaded for alternative solutions, but he was deaf to reason." Anya's fists clenched in her lap, the phantom sting of memory sharp. She recalled the tales, the hushed whispers of Blackwood wolves encroaching, stealing their dwindling resources. "One night," Kalen continued, his voice roughened, "a raiding party returned altered, corrupted. My father had unearthed something in the Silverstream lands, a darkness, an ancient power. He used it to amplify his warriors, granting them unnatural strength, speed, ruthlessness." Anya's breath hitched in her throat. The ancient magic that pulsed beneath the Silverstream lands was no mere whisper. Her father had been its guardian, keeping it veiled, untouched. Had Kalen's father violated that sacred trust? Had he poisoned it? "I confronted him," Kalen said, his eyes finally meeting hers, reflecting a genuine anguish. "I accused him of playing with forces beyond his comprehension, endangering the entire pack. He dismissed my concerns, blinded by the allure of power, the promise of conquest." He leaned forward, his voice a husky whisper. "He commanded me to undergo the transformation, to be infused with this dark magic." Anya saw the internal battle raging in his eyes, the revulsion he clearly felt. "And?" she prompted, her voice thin. "I refused," he said, his jaw tightening. "I challenged him. Our laws dictate a challenge to the Alpha be settled in a duel to the death." The air vibrated with unspoken history. Anya knew the broad strokes of Kalen's ascension, the brutal fight that had culminated in patricide. But this narrative, this dark undercurrent of tainted magic and internal conflict, was new. "I didn't want to kill him," Kalen confessed, regret lacing his tone. "But he left me no choice. He had become me something else, a monster. I had to safeguard the pack, even at the cost of my own father's life." He sought her gaze, pleading for some semblance of understanding. "The conflict with your Paka, it wasn't about territorial gain, Anya. It was about containment, extinguishing the source of that dark magic before it metastasized." Anya stared, her mind fighting to reconcile this new version of events with the ingrained narrative of hatred. Could this be true? Was there a depth to the story she had never fathomed? Or was it simply another layer of deception, meticulously crafted to manipulate her, to erode her resolve? "And my father?" she finally choked out, her voice trembling. Was his death also about stopping this magic? Kalen's face darkened. Your father was a formidable leader, an unmatched warrior. He fought with valor, but he was also shielding the source of the magic. He refused to relinquish it, to allow its destruction. I was left with no alternative. No alternative? Anya echoed, her voice rising in pitch. Choice is never absent. You could have found another path. You could have shown mercy. You could have spared my pack. She surged to her feet, the chair screeching against the unforgiving stone. Don't cloak your deeds in tales of dark magic and lofty ideals. You murdered my father. You razed my home. You stole everything from me. And now you expect belief? Forgiveness? Tears streamed down her face, scalding with rage. She yearned to strike, to claw, to rend him limb from limb. But she remained trapped, shackled by the mating bond, a captive within his dominion. Kalen mirrored her movement, his face a canvas of pain. He reached out, but she recoiled, flinching from his touch as though burned. I don't anticipate forgiveness, he said softly, his voice laced with supplication. I merely implore you to entertain the possibility that there is more to this saga than you perceive, that I am not the villain you believe me to be. His hand fell, defeated, to his side. I know I can never erase the past, but I pledge to forge a better future for both our peoples. He turned, his shoulders weighed down with the burden of his confession, and walked towards the exit. He paused at the threshold, casting one last look her way. Reflect on what I've shared, Anya. And if, despite everything, hatred remains, I will accept it. But at least know the truth. He departed, leaving Anya alone in the oppressive silence of her chamber, her mind a tempest of conflicting emotions. The truth, such an elusive, intangible thing. Could she ever grasp it, disentangled from the web of bloodshed and betrayal? A tentative bridge of words had been extended, but would it bear the weight of their interwoven history, or would it shatter, plunging them both into the abyss? The Alpha's Justice Kalen's gilded cage, once a stark reminder of her captivity, now felt muted. Perhaps Anya was acclimating to its extravagance, or simply succumbing to a weary resignation. The heavy drapes remained fastened, barring the nascent morning light from the arched windows. Perched on the sumptuous, fur-laden bed, she inhaled the room's peculiar aroma. Pine needles mingled with Kalen's distinctive scent, an earthy, almost feral musk. Yesterday's disclosures, Kalen's carefully curated version, fermented in her thoughts like a bitter brew. Dark arts, regicide, a desperate gambit to safeguard his pack. Such tales belonged to fanciful folklore, whispered around crackling bonfires, not as justification for cold-blooded butchery. Yet, she struggled to entirely discount the sincerity that flickered within his gaze. A clamor from beyond the chamber's threshold snapped her from her reverie. Strident voices, laced with animosity, reverberated through the stone edifice. Anya stood, her bare feet padding softly against the deep pile rug, and approached the massive oak door. Ear pressed to the cool wood, she strained to decipher the quarrel. He pilfered from the communal stores. Been stashing meat, Alpha. We witnessed it. A shrill, frantic voice accused. A deeper voice, brimming with defiance, shot back. I required it. My litter is feeble, scarcely weaned. They necessitate the supplement. The dispute intensified, punctuated by guttural growls and impassioned pleas. Then, a novel timbre, one that sent an involuntary shiver tracing down Anya's spine, cleaved through the uproar. Enough! Kalen's command, amplified with alpha authority, silence the discord immediately. Escort them both to the training grounds. At once. Anya recoiled from the door, heart hammering against her ribs. Instinct told her that whatever dispensation Kalen decreed would be swift and irrevocable. A morbid inquisitiveness, a desire to fathom the man who held her captive and laid claim to her as his mate, compelled her to follow. She slipped from the chamber unseen, the weighty door swinging shut behind her with barely a whisper. The Blackwood packhouse corridors teemed with motion, wolves of all ages scurrying about their tasks. Anya clung to the periphery, her silver pelt a sharp contrast against the muted browns and blacks of the Blackwood wolves. She arrived at the training grounds as Kalen strode into the clearing, his very presence exuding dominance. The two wolves, a youthful female with pleading eyes and a grizzled male with a stubborn set to his jaw, stood before him, heads bowed in deference. The atmosphere pulsed with anticipation. "Lyra," Kalen began, his tone severe yet tempered, "you indict Rorik of misappropriating pack resources. Is this veracious?" Lyra, trembling visibly, nodded. "Indeed, Alpha. I observed him abscond with the meat. He concealed it within his den." Kalen pivoted towards Rorik, his gaze unwavering. "Rorik, do you refute this?" Rorik met Kalen's stare, his jaw clenched tight. "I claimed the meat, Alpha, but it was for my pups. They are frail. Their need surpasses even the warriors preparing for conflict." A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled pack. Theft from the collective stores constituted a grave infraction, punishable by severe retribution. Yet, Rorik's justification it plucked at the strings of empathy within even the most battle-hardened warriors. Kalen remained impassive for a protracted moment, his expression a blank slate. Then, he spoke, his voice resonating with power. "Rorik, you transgressed pack doctrine. You jeopardized the stability of our provisions. Consequently, you shall receive 20 lashes. A collective intake of breath swept over the assembly. 20 lashes comprised a brutal sentence, capable of crippling a wolf. A wave of indignation washed over Anya. This was the merciless Alpha she had anticipated, the butcher who had annihilated her kin. But Kalen had not yet concluded. "However," he continued, his voice softening imperceptibly, "I apprehend your desperation. Your actions stemmed from paternal devotion. Ergo, Lyra, you shall apportion a segment of your next kill to Rorik and his offspring. Ensure his pups acquire the sustenance they require." Lyra appeared stunned, but swiftly nodded, a surge of relief washing over her features. Kalen then addressed Rorik once more, his gaze penetrating. "This constitutes your sole admonition, Rorik. Never again resort to thievery. Should your pups require assistance, you appeal to me. I shall ensure their well-being. Understood?" Rorik, tears streaming down his muzzle, inclined his head. "Understood, Alpha. My gratitude, Alpha." The punishment was executed with dispatch and precision. Rorik endured the lashes with stoic composure, his frame quivering in agony. Anya watched, her stomach roiling, yet she could not deny the equity of Kalen's judgment. He had upheld the law, whilst concurrently extending clemency. Later that day, Anya discovered Kalen within the pack nursery, a diminutive, sequestered den filled with the softest pelts and the comforting fragrance of maternal milk. He knelt beside a litter of pups, his massive paws gently caressing their delicate forms. One pup, tinier and weaker than its siblings, whimpered softly. Kalen scooped it up, cradling it in his arms. "He is not thriving," a female wolf, presumably the mother, voiced anxiously. "He barely feeds. I fear he will not endure." Kalen scrutinized the pup, his brow furrowed in concern. He retrieved a vial from a nearby shelf and meticulously deposited a few drops of milky fluid into the pup's maw. This constitutes a tonic derived from flora indigenous to the Shadowfan, he explained, his voice a soft murmur. It shall fortify him. Administer this twice daily, and ensure he receives ample rest. He returned the pup to its mother, his countenance reflecting a tenderness that startled Anya. This was not the implacable Alpha she had witnessed upon the battlefield. This was a solicitous, empathetic leader, deeply committed to the welfare of his pack. As Anya beheld Kalen tending to the pups, a turbulent confluence of emotions swirled within her. She had arrived at the Blackwood pack anticipating a fiend, a remorseless despot, and whilst she had glimpsed facets of that darkness, she had also observed acts of compassion, impartiality, and authentic solicitude. Could she reconcile these conflicting visages? Could she reconcile the man who had murdered her sire with the Alpha who nursed orphaned pups? The response, she discerned, was far from facile, and the pathway to either vengeance or absolution was enshrouded in shadow, as indeterminate as the destiny that awaited her. The Alpha's justice, she realized, was far more intricate than she could ever have expected. Shadows on the border, Bloodfang scouts. Torin's report rasped, each word clipped. Alpha, spotted near the Whispering Pines. No trespass, but close enough to taste our fear, had we any to offer. His jaw was a rigid line as he spoke in Kalen's war room. The familiar redolence of pine and pack loyalty was tainted by a prickling unease. Kalen, a bulwark of muscle and leashed ferocity, stood before the expansive strategic map carved into the table's polished surface. The map illustrated Blackwood lands and their borders. The Whispering Pines represented a weak spot, a natural breach Silverstream had once guarded with unwavering vigilance. Now Silverstream was gone. Numbers? Kalen asked, his voice a low rumble. 5, possibly 6, heavily armed, adored with Ragnar's distinctive war paint. They withdrew sharply at the sight of our patrol. Torin's gaze flickered to Anya, a silent sentinel by the doorway. Her presence was a constant reminder of the pack he'd decimated, the fragile armistice they now observed. A blatant provocation, Alpha. They're probing our defenses. Kalen pivoted, his keen eyes encompassing his advisors. Each face bore the mark of apprehension. Liam, the beta, a paragon of reliability, his coat the color of rich earth. Ilara, the gamma, her mind quick and sharp, slivers of silver threading through her fur. And Anya, her gaze like polished obsidian, missing nothing. Ragnar sensed vulnerability. He believes us weakened. He's not wrong, Ilara countered, blunt as ever. We suffered grievous losses in the Silverstream conflict, and the pack remains. Fractured, her eyes flickered towards Anya, a silent accusation. Enough, Kalen's growl stilled the rising tension. We will project strength. Ragnar Bloodfang will learn the price of testing the Blackwood Alpha. He advanced towards the map, fingers tracing the boundary line. Torin, double patrol strength along the western perimeter. Liam, fortify the Whispering Pines. I want every inch watched. Ilara, let it be known that any Bloodfang caught encroaching will face severe retribution. A chorus of nods acknowledged his commands, each filled with grim resolve. Anya remained impassive. Kalen's focus narrowed on her. You know that terrain, Anya, better than anyone here. Your counsel? Anya paused, considering her reply. The air thrummed with residual bitterness. The pines are, indeed, exposed. but the Silverstream pack constructed a network of hidden trenches and lookout points along the ridge above the valley, designed to funnel intruders into prepared killing grounds. Kill zones? Kill zones? Liam's brow furrowed in confusion. We found no such thing. They are expertly concealed, Anya said, her voice even, woven with illusion magic and expertly blended with the natural landscape. My father ensured it. A fleeting expression of sorrow flickered across her features, swiftly masked. Kalen scrutinized her. Can you guide us to them? Yes, Anya confirmed, barely audible. Moreover, the Silverstream pack maintained a subterranean network beneath the pines for rapid deployment and flanking maneuvers. Ragnar will be utterly blind to them. Tunnels? Torin scoffed derisively. More Silverstream trickery? We should assume traps, Alpha. This could be deception. That is sufficient, Torin. Kalen's tone brooked no argument. He turned back to Anya. Show me on the map. Anya moved to the table, her movements betraying a captivating grace, despite the invisible chains binding her. She indicated a specific area on the ridge. The primary entrance to the tunnel system lies here, obscured behind a cascade. Numerous concealed exits line the ridge, masked by dense foliage and illusionary veils. Kalen leaned in, studying the map intently. The potential was undeniable. Exploiting those tunnels could transform Ragnar's intrusion into a lethal ambush. Yet, he couldn't extinguish the sensation that he was stepping into a meticulously designed snare. What of internal defenses? Traps within the tunnels? There were safeguards, Anya conceded. Pressure plates rigged to trigger cans. Tripwires connected to sonic emitters. Designed to disorient and incapacitate. I can disable them. You can? Skepticism laced Ilara's tone. I assisted in their construction, Anya countered, her eyes flashing with defiance. My father entrusted me with their secrets. Kalen weighed her words. He lacked legitimate cause for trust, yet he couldn't dismiss the value of her knowledge. It might prove to be the crucial element in defending his territory, in stifling Ragnar's ambitions, before they truly blossomed. We will proceed with utmost caution. Torin, you and Liam will accompany Anya to the Whispering Pines. She will expose the tunnels and the kill zones, disarm any traps she identifies. Ilara, prepare the pack for imminent conflict. I want every wolf poised to defend our borders. And you, Alpha? Liam inquired. I will join you at the Pines at dawn. I intend to assess these defenses firsthand. Kalen's gaze hardened. And Anya, I advise against any ill-conceived actions. My patience is nearly exhausted. Anya met his gaze unflinchingly. I have no desire to betray you, Alpha. My sole objective is the safety of my remaining pack. If safeguarding your territory achieves that, then I will do what must be done. As the advisors dispersed to execute his directives, Kalen remained isolated with Anya in the war room. The silence hung heavy, permeated by suspicion and unspoken tensions. Why, Anya? Why are you aiding me? Because, she replied, her voice a hushed whisper. Ragnar Bloodfang is a monster. He will only sow chaos and devastation throughout this land. While you may be my adversary, you are the lesser one. Kalen closed the distance between them, invading her personal space. And what if I disbelieve you? What if I suspect this is merely a calculated deception, a ploy to lull us into a false sense of security? Anya tilted her head, her eyes narrowing shrewdly. Then you are a fool, Alpha, and you will condemn your pack to a sanguinary war that could have been averted. She turned and departed. leaving Kalen alone with his doubts. The burden of leadership weighed heavily, an oppressive mantle of responsibility and mistrust. He had to safeguard his pack, even if it demanded placing faith in the daughter of his enemy. Yet, he recognized, deep down, that trusting Anya represented the most perilous gamble he had ever undertaken. Anya walked through the halls. The air seemed to hum with silent pronouncements. With the phantoms of the past and the impending specter of the future, she could feel Torin's gaze boring into her back, an ever-present reminder of her status. Outsider, prisoner, threat. But there was another, subtle change in the atmosphere, a sense of anticipation and fear, and also, perhaps, a spark of hope. The Blackwood pack was steeling itself for bloodshed, and she was now, by circumstance, a part of it. Uneasy Alliance, the war room, typically a vibrant hub of assurance, now felt suffocating, a tomb of foreboding. Spread across the long, scarred table were maps charting Blackwood territory, each pin a potential entry point for Ragnar's marauders. A cluster of crimson flags marked Whispering Pines, prominent as a suppurating sore. At the head of the table stood Kalen, his features a mask of grim resolve that only deepened the oppressive atmosphere. Anya stood slightly withdrawn, acutely aware of every gaze fixed upon her. She was a phantom, a living testament to the pack they'd extinguished, the accord they'd demolished. "They're testing the pines," Torin rumbled, his voice a rasping growl. He jabbed a thick finger at the map. "Reconnaissance, small squads, probing our defenses, searching for weakness." Kalen's jaw set hard. "And they'll find it if we allow them. The pines have always been a liability. Too much ground, too few warriors, not since Silverstream." Anya recoiled as if struck, the name a searing scar on her very being. She possessed an intimate knowledge of the pines, surpassing anyone in the chamber. Every hidden ravine, every treacherous route, every carefully planned ambush her father had conceived. This expertise was a fiery brand within her, a potent weapon. Yet, the notion of deploying it to safeguard the pack that had annihilated her own was a bitter draught. "There are subterranean passages," she stated, her voice barely audible. Every head swiveled, suspicion and animosity warring in their eyes. "Tunnels and concealed routes. My father, he engineered them to channel enemies into predefined killing grounds." Kalen pivoted, fixing her with an intense stare. "Killing grounds? Elaborate." Anya hesitated, memories surging. Training alongside her father, the thrill of the hunt, the steadfast devotion of her brethren. She suppressed them, forcing her attention onto the present. "The tunnels are constricted, designed for Silverstream wolves. They surface in locations granting a tactical edge, higher elevations, camouflaged positions, natural constrictions. My father, he foresaw incursions from the south. The pines were always the likeliest target. And you know these passages," Kalen pressed, his voice sharp with urgency. "Intimately," Anya affirmed, her voice gaining strength. "I can guide your warriors, show them where to array themselves, how to amplify their defenses." Torin scoffed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "And why would you extend such aid, Anya? What compels you to help us, after what we inflicted upon your pack?" The question hung in the air, thick with condemnation. Anya met Torin's stare, her own unwavering and steady. "Because Ragnar Bloodfang embodies a greater peril. He won't cease at Silverstream. He'll seize everything, everyone. Should Blackwood succumb, nothing remains to oppose him." It was a carefully crafted half-truth, a manufactured veneer. The genuine motivation, the sickening gravitational pull she felt towards Kalen, remained locked away in the deepest recesses of her heart. Kalen moved forward and laid a hand on Torin's shoulder. Enough, Torin. Anya has offered her assistance, and we are in dire need of it. We cannot afford to be crippled by distrust. He turned back to Anya, his expression unreadable. Show me these tunnels. Show me these killing grounds. For the next hour, Anya meticulously described the layout of the passages and the surrounding terrain. With a charcoal stick, she sketched diagrams on a spare piece of parchment, annotating the locations of pressure plates, tripwires, and concealed archer nests. Kalen listened intently, peppering her with incisive questions, his gaze never proud, straying from her face. Here, Anya indicated a spot on the map, near a dense thicket bristling with thorns. This tunnel emerges behind a natural screen. Warriors can take up position there, undetected, and ambush any foe attempting to penetrate the thicket. And the tunnel itself? Kalen queried. Its capacity? 2, maybe 3 warriors at a time, Anya replied. It's narrow, designed for speed and agility, unsuited to large-scale troop deployments. We can exploit that, Kalen murmured, tapping the map with his finger. A small, elite team of trackers. They can employ the tunnel to outflank the enemy, to break up their advance. Torin remained unconvinced, arms crossed like barricades. It's a gamble, Alpha. We're placing our warriors in a compromised position, dependent on intelligence from someone who possesses ample cause to betray us. Kalen sighed, raking a hand through his raven hair. I know it's a gamble, Torin, but we are left with no alternative. We are outnumbered, outmatched. We require every advantage we can secure. He turned to Anya, his eyes searching hers. Are you certain about this, Anya? Are you prepared to assist us in defending against Ragnar? Anya met his gaze, her heart hammering against her ribs. I am, she asserted, the words resonating with forced conviction. I want to see Ragnar defeated. I want to see him held accountable for his actions. Kalen nodded slowly, his expression softening perceptibly. Then we must proceed. Torin, assemble a team of trackers. I want them at the Pines by sunrise. Anya, you will accompany them, guide them through the tunnels. Torin's jaw tightened, but he offered a curt nod. As you command, Alpha. He pivoted and stalked from the war room, his disapproval a palpable presence. With Torin's departure, an awkward silence descended upon the room. Anya shifted uneasily, feeling the weight of Kalen's gaze. They don't trust me, she stated, her voice barely a whisper. I can hardly blame them. Trust must be earned, Anya, Kalen responded, his voice low and resonant. You have a considerable distance to traverse. And what of you? Anya challenged, her voice just above a breath. Do you place your trust in me, Kalen? He hesitated, his gaze darting away from hers momentarily. I trust in your desire to see Ragnar defeated. I trust in your willingness to do what is necessary to achieve that outcome. But you harbor reservations, Anya pressed. You still suspect I might betray you. Kalen closed the distance between them, his presence overwhelming. I am a leader, Anya. I am bound to weigh every possibility, every potential threat. But I also recognize that sometimes the most profound strength springs from the most unlikely of partnerships. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing against her cheek. Prove them wrong, Anya. Demonstrate to them that you are not our adversary. Anya leaned into his touch, her heart aching with a perplexing blend of longing and animosity. "I'll do what I can," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But do not expect me to forget what you did to my pack." "Do not expect absolution." Kalen's hand dropped to his side, his expression hardening once more. "I expect nothing, Anya. Simply fulfill your duty." He turned and departed, leaving Anya alone in the war room, surrounded by the specters of her past and the tentative promises of her future. The atmosphere hung heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. The uneasy alliance had been forged, but its resilience remained to be tested. The fate of the Blackwood pack, and potentially the entire region, hinged on the fragile accord between a murderer and his enemy's daughter. Ambush in the woods, the air, dense with the aroma of resin and wet soil, pressed down on them. Anya walked alongside Kalen, their silence a tangible barrier. Each crunch of their boots on the leaf-strewn path punctuated the strained accord between them. They patrolled the western edge of Blackwood lands, its vulnerability a silent invitation to ambush. The shared duty, a necessary burden, saw each acknowledging the other's strength, even as resentment simmered. Kalen's stormy gaze scanned the timberline, his movements a predator's grace in his own territory. Anya, smaller but no less confident, projected a similar vigilance, a keen awareness threading through the forest's fabric. She attended to the subtle wind shifts, the discordant rustle in the foliage, the unnatural quiet of the birds. "They're here," she breathed, her voice a whisper edged with hard-won experience. Kalen halted, a gesture silencing the two Blackwood warriors flanking them. "How many?" he rumbled. "Enough to be a problem," Anya countered, her focus locked on a wall of thorny scrub. Before Kalen could respond, the forest exploded. A barbaric yawp ripped through the stillness as Bloodfang warriors surged from concealment. Arrows, black-feathered and deadly, rained down, biting into bark and churning the soil. The Blackwood warriors roared in defiance, shifting to their lupine forms, their snarls echoing through the woods. Kalen shoved Anya behind him, his change a rapid, visceral event. Bones cracked and reshaped. Fur burst forth, and the Alpha stood as a colossal black wolf, fangs bared, eyes burning with fierce instinct. He launched himself at the closest Bloodfang, a shadow bolting through the turmoil. Anya remained unchanged. Not yet. She moved with precise economy, evading arrows, threading the chaotic melee. She drew the Blackwood knife from its sheath, the cool steel a familiar reassurance. This wasn't her battle, not really, but she wouldn't stand by and watch Kalen die. Though vengeance still pulsed within her, survival instincts took over. To live, to protect. A Bloodfang warrior, crimson war paint streaking his face, charged, a rough-hewn axe raised. Anya sidestepped the blow, the weapon whistling past her ear. She plunged the knife into his flank, twisting the blade expertly. He collapsed, a choked gurgle his last sound. More Bloodfang warriors closed in, their numbers overwhelming. Kalen, a whirlwind of black fur and snapping jaws, carved a path through their ranks, but they kept coming, an unyielding wave of aggression. One Blackwood warrior fell, a gaping wound in his throat. The other, fighting fiercely, was steadily pushed back. Kalen, sensing the shift in the fight, forced his way back to Anya, positioning himself as a shield. He barked a sharp command to the remaining warrior, ordering him to retreat and alert the pack. The warrior hesitated, glancing at Anya, suspicion etched on his features. "Go!" Kalen's snarl resonated with Alpha authority. "Protect the pack!" The warrior obeyed, vanishing into the trees. Kalen turned, his lupine eyes conveying a silent plea. "Trust me." Then he shifted back, momentarily naked before snatching a discarded tunic. "Back to back," he said, his voice gravelly. "We hold them." Anya nodded, her gaze sweeping their encirclement. They were outnumbered, outmatched, but not broken. Not yet. She moved to stand beside Kalen, the heat radiating from him a surprising comfort against her spine. The Bloodfang warriors surged forward, their eyes blazing with lust for blood. Anya and Kalen met their charge, a vortex of steel and claw. Anya flowed with lethal grace, her knife a flickering dance as she deflected blows and found vulnerabilities. Kalen, his strength amplified by his wolf form, fought with unrestrained brutality, each strike a bone-jarring impact. They moved as one, a deadly, synchronized ballet. Kalen crushed one foe with his raw power, while Anya slipped past his guard to deliver a killing blow to another. They were an improbable pairing, yoked together by a destiny neither desired, but in that instant, amidst the carnage, they were a force formidable. An arrow grazed Anya's arm, leaving a shallow, stinging cut. She suppressed a grimace and pressed onward. Kalen roared, ripping the throat from the archer who had launched the attack. The Bloodfang warriors, realizing their initial assault had failed, shifted their tactics. They began to circle, attempting to exhaust them, searching for a weak point. Anya felt her muscles scream in protest, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She knew their endurance was limited. Kalen, sensing her flagging strength, shifted again, his wolf form a rampart against the onslaught. He snapped and lunged, holding the Bloodfang warriors at bay, buying Anya a crucial respite. She watched him, her heart hammering in her chest, a bewildering mix of fear and respect churning within her. This was the Alpha who had annihilated her pack, the one she had vowed to destroy. Yet, he was defending her, fighting with her, his every action a testament to a devotion she couldn't reconcile. A towering Bloodfang warrior, his face a landscape of scars, advanced. He wielded a massive claymore, its polished surface reflecting the filtered sunlight. He spat on the ground, his gaze fixed on Kalen. "Blackwood," he rasped, "you die here." Kalen bared his fangs in a soundless snarl. He lunged at the warrior, but the warrior was prepared, his claymore raised to intercept the attack. The two collided, steel against fang, a savage contest of brute strength and practiced skill. Anya knew she needed to act. Kalen possessed immense power, but he couldn't hold them all off indefinitely. She surveyed their surroundings, seeking any possible advantage. Her gaze landed on a cluster of boulders, partly obscured by undergrowth. An idea ignited in her mind, a desperate gamble, but their only prospect. She murmured her plan to Kalen, her voice barely audible above the din of battle. He hesitated briefly, his eyes questioning, but then he nodded, trusting her judgment. Anya moved quickly, attracting the attention of several Bloodfang warriors. She drew them towards the rocks, feinting and dodging, herding them into a compact group. When they were positioned as she needed, she signaled Kalen. With a primeval bellow, Kalen reverted to his human form and hurled himself against the largest boulder, pushing with all his might. The rock wobbled, then plunged forward, setting off a cascade. The other rocks tumbled and rolled, crushing the Bloodfang warriors caught beneath. The remaining Bloodfang warriors scattered, their bloodlust turning to terror. They fled into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Anya and Kalen stood panting, their bodies aching and bloodied, but alive. Silence descended once more, broken only by the sound of their ragged breathing. Kalen turned to Anya, his eyes searching hers. "You okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Anya nodded, avoiding his gaze. I'm fine. She was far from fine. She was shaken, disoriented, and more conflicted than ever. She had fought with Kalen, trusted him, and he had saved her. But he remained her enemy. Didn't he? The weight of her conflicting emotions pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She was lost in a storm of thoughts and feelings. All she could grasp was that the war raged on, and her own internal conflict had just begun. The healers touched the hush that descended after the rock slide pressed in on them, almost louder than the preceding clash of steel. Anya knelt beside Kalen, her pulse a frantic drum against her breastbone. He was propped against a jagged piece of the collapsed cliff face, a hand clamped to a rent in his flank. Dark blood bloomed across his fur, a grim testament to the Bloodfang's viciousness. He hadn't shifted, conserving his energy, likely hoping to slow the flow. Let me look, Anya managed, her voice steadier than her trembling hands. Kalen emitted a non-committal growl. He moved his hand, and Anya's breath hitched. A jagged tear, brutally deep. She possessed enough knowledge of anatomy, human and lupine, to know it demanded swift attention. Shift, she ordered, brooking no argument. It will be simpler to treat. Hesitation flickered in Kalen's gaze, his usually imperious golden eyes clouded with pain. He regarded her, a silent plea for reassurance. Trust, a fragile bridge between them, easily shattered. But he obeyed, the sickening crackle of bone a violation as he transformed, standing before her moments later, exposed and vulnerable. Anya forced herself to hold his gaze, suppressing the unwelcome heat that flared at the sight of his powerful build. Not now. She ripped strips from her tunic, grateful for her mother's insistence on practical skills, talents she deemed useless, now vital for saving the life of the Alpha who had obliterated her world. This will sting, she warned, beginning to cleanse the wound with water from her canteen. Kalen's muscles bunched, but he remained silent, watching her with an inscrutable expression. Anya worked with focused efficiency, her touch both gentle and firm. She detected the nascent signs of infection. Plain water wouldn't suffice. Stay here, she said, rising. I know a place where healing herbs grow. Kalen's hand snaked out, his grip surprisingly forceful on her wrist. Don't stray far, he rasped. Anya nodded, gently disentangling her hand. She couldn't decipher his concern. Surely he didn't believe she would flee. Where could she even go? Besides, abandoning him, injured, was unthinkable. She discovered the herbs she needed flourishing near a trickling stream feverfew and yarrow, their healing properties well known. She mashed them into a bitter poultice, a familiar flavor on her tongue. Returning to Kalen, she found him as she'd left him, eyes shut, his breathing shallow and uneven. She knelt beside him, applying the poultice to the gash. Kalen winced, a sharp hiss escaping his lips, but otherwise remained still. My mother taught me, Anya murmured, her voice barely audible. She was a healer. She knew every plant, every cure. Kalen's eyes opened, fixing on her face. And your father? He asked, his tone carefully measured. Anya's hands paused, hovering over the injury. The question hung between them, a stark reminder of the abyss that separated them. He was a warrior, she stated, her voice devoid of inflection. He taught me how to fight. He was a strong leader, Kalen countered, his gaze unwavering. He cared for his pack. Anya swallowed, battling the rising tide of anger and anguish. And yet, you killed him. Kalen didn't recoil. didn't avert his eyes. "It was war," he responded, his voice low and weighted with regret. He would have done the same. "But you didn't have to," Anya insisted, her voice gaining volume. "There could have been another way." "There was no other way," Kalen stated, his tone firm. "Your pack attacked first. I acted to protect my own." Anya stared at him, her eyes wells of pain. He spoke of protecting his people, oblivious to the gaping wound his actions had inflicted. He talked of war, an inevitable force, but she found no forgiveness within herself. "Why am I still alive, Kalen?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you finish it?" Kalen reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. The unexpected tenderness sent a shiver through her. "Because you are my mate, Anya," he confessed, his voice roughened with emotion. "And I could never harm you." Anya flinched from his touch, her heart hammering against her ribs. Mate. The word tasted like ash, a cruel joke of destiny. How could she be bound to the man who had shattered her existence? "Don't," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Don't say that. It's the truth," Kalen insisted, his eyes burning with raw intensity. "I felt it the moment I saw you. The bondit's undeniable." Anya yearned to deny it, to rail against the unfairness of it all. But deep inside, she recognized the truth. She, too, had felt that inexplicable pull, that irresistible connection. It fueled her hatred, a constant reminder of what might have been, of all she had forfeited. She completed bandaging his wound, her movements stiff and detached. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words and raw emotion. "We should return to the pack," she said, finally breaking the suffocating quiet, "before darkness falls." Kalen nodded, slowly regaining his feet. He was weakened, it was clear, but he masked it effectively. He looked at her, his eyes seeking something in hers. "Thank you, Anya," he said, his voice carrying a weight of sincerity. Anya offered no reply. She couldn't muster any gratitude. Turning away, she began to lead the way back through the trees. The bond between them pulsed like a tangible thing, a silent, persistent presence. She was his mate, her enemy's daughter, and she had no inkling of what awaited them. Blood on the moon. The air tasted of iron and coming violence, a metallic premonition Anya knew intimately from Silverstream's fall. This time, however, it heralded not past grief, but a looming clash. A resonant growl, deep and animalistic, pulsed through the earth, magnified by the encroaching horde. The Bloodfangs were upon them. From her perch on the Blackwood Ridge, Anya surveyed the crimson-dyed fur and sharpened metal, a brutal army fueled by Ragnar Bloodfang's ravenous ambition. They moved with predatory efficiency, their eyes gleaming with savage intent beneath the blood-tinged lunar light. At their head was Ragnar, a colossal figure of raw power, his sable coat shifting as he assessed Blackwood's fortifications with chilling calculation. "They're testing us," Kalen murmured beside her, his voice stripped of its usual authority, replaced by a stark resolve. His shoulders were braced, his gaze unwavering. Anya's hasty healing had sealed the wound from the rockslide, but the echo of her touch, the awkward closeness, still lingered between them, a silent undercurrent complicating the imminent war. "More than testing," Anya retorted, her tone sharper than intended. "They're probing for weaknesses. Ragnar doesn't waste time on petty fights. He wants Blackwood, and he wants you." Kalen's jaw hardened. "Then he'll find us prepared." He addressed Torin, who stood a respectful distance away, suspicion clouding his features as he watched Anya. "Torin, Ensure the warriors are deployed as planned. Reinforce the southern flank, that's where the storm will break. Torin nodded stiffly, his eyes lingering on Anya before he melted into the forest shadows, a silent disapproval a palpable barrier. The distrust was a constant reminder of her outsider status, a Silverstream wolf within Blackwood territory. Anya followed his departure, a familiar ache blooming in her chest. She was adrift between loyalties, haunted by the past and uncertain of her future. "They don't believe in me," she stated plainly. Kalen sighed, his face drawn with fatigue. "Trust is earned, Anya, not freely given. Especially now." He tanned, his golden eyes seeking hers. "But I value your instincts. What's your assessment?" Anya inhaled deeply, pushing aside the sting of Torin's prejudice and focusing on the strategy at hand. "The Bloodfangs prize brute force. They'll try to crush you with numbers, but they lack subtlety. That's their vulnerability." She indicated a narrow ravine along the western border. "Set a trap there. Draw them in. Exploit the terrain." Kalen studied the ravine, his expression shifting to thoughtful consideration. A funnel. It could work. A flicker of renewed conviction ignited in his gaze. "Torin!" he bellowed, his voice booming across the clearing. "Redirect a contingent to the western ravine. Prepare for an ambush." As Kalen issued orders, Anya turned to a small cluster of wolves huddled near the edge of the glade. The remnants of Silverstream, survivors of Ragnar's butchery, their eyes reflecting a blend of terror and bitterness. They had followed her to Blackwood, seeking sanctuary in the Alpha's territory, the one who had unintentionally spared them from annihilation. Silverstream. Anya's voice resonated with an inner strength she hadn't known she possessed. "This is not our battle, but this is our home now. Ragnar Bloodfang stole our lives once. We will not allow him to do so again. We stand with Blackwood. We will defend this land with our lives." A ripple of murmurs passed through the group, a tentative spark of defiance igniting in their eyes. One by one they rose, fear receding before a burgeoning resolve. Among them was Lyra, a young she-wolf who had lost her entire family in the Bloodfang raid. Her eyes connected with Anya's, and in that shared sorrow, Anya saw a sliver of hope, a remnant of the Silverstream spirit that Ragnar had failed to snuff out. "What do you need us to do, Anya?" Lyra's voice was barely audible. Anya met her gaze, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and grief. "I need you to remember who you are," she declared, her voice firm. "You are Silverstream. We are survivors. We are strong. We will protect those who have given us shelter." She paused, then added, "Those who cannot fight tend to the wounded. Prepare the healing poultices. Every contribution matters." She scanned their faces, ensuring they understood. "We will fight alongside the Blackwood warriors. We will show Ragnar Bloodfang that Silverstream is not broken. We will show him that even in the face of ruin, we will never yield." A unified roar erupted from the Silverstream wolves, a brazen challenge to the approaching threat. Anya felt a surge of adrenaline, a potent cocktail of fear and determination bolstering her resolve. She was no longer just a bereaved daughter seeking vengeance. She was a leader, a guardian, a beacon of light for those who had lost everything. Bloodfangs drew closer, their guttural snarls echoing through the trees, the earth trembling with their advance. The battle was imminent. Anya glanced at Kalen, his face a mask of grim resolve, his eyes burning with fierce conviction. He offered a curt nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose, a fragile alliance forged in the crucible of war. The blood moon climbed higher, bathing the impending battlefield in an eerie crimson light. The air thrummed with tension, the odor of blood intensifying with each moment. The fate of Blackwood, and perhaps even the remnants of Silverstream, hung precariously in the balance. Anya inhaled deeply, steeling herself for the coming onslaught. Revenge, redemption, and sheer survival were interwoven, a complex web of emotions threatening to ensnare her. She did not know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. She would fight. She would fight for her pack, for her newfound home, and for the chance to carve out a new destiny, even in the shadow of her father's murderer. The first wave of Bloodfangs crashed against the Blackwood defenses, and the forest dissolved into a pandemonium of snarls, howls, and clashing steel. The battle had begun in earnest. Loyalties tested the air shimmered with potent magic, underscored by the sharp coppery scent of spilled blood. Anya was acutely aware of everything, the crunch of bone underfoot, the wind's howl carrying distant cries, the tremor of the earth mirroring her own pulse. Ragnar's horde hammered against Blackwood's fortifications, an unyielding wave against a rocky shore. She fought as Kalen's shadow, a blur of quicksilver grace and deadly precision honed by Silverstream discipline. He, in turn, was a tempest of black fur and snapping jaws, carving a path through the invaders, each earth-shaking bellow a challenge and a paw. Command. East flank collapsing, Anya yelled, her voice thin against the cacophony. Kalen responded with a sharp jerk of his head, amber eyes burning with animalistic fervor. Redirecting his course, he steered a band of fighters to shore up the faltering line. Anya followed close behind, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a bewildering cocktail of dread and exhilaration flooding her senses. Her father's lessons echoed in her mind, the tactical acumen he'd ingrained since she was a cub, now wielded to protect the very clan that had decimated her own. The bitter twist of fate was a hard draught to swallow, but survival demanded ruthless practicality. She noticed Lyra, a fledgling Silverstream, struggling desperately against two massive Bloodfang brutes, her resistance fueled by raw grief, though ultimately uneven. That reckless fire was familiar, a mirror to her past self. Springing into action, Anya slashed downward. One opponent crumpled instantly, vitality draining out from a ruined windpipe. The other whirled, face contorted in a savage grimace. Anya? Lyra breathed, astonishment and a fragile spark of hope widening her eyes. Focus! Save the gratitude for later, Anya snapped, evading a clumsy swipe. A feint to the left, a sudden strike to the right, and her fangs sank into his hamstring. He roared, momentarily disabled. Anya capitalized, slamming into him with every ounce of her weight. He crashed, dazed, and she finished it. Turning back, her expression gentled somewhat. You all right? Lyra nodded, gasping for air. I thought it was over. Her features hardened. Thanks. But don't think this changes things. I haven't forgotten what Kalen did. Or his pack. Anya sighed. I know, Lyra. But right now, staying alive is paramount. The rest can wait. She scanned the chaos unfolding around them, every instinct screaming. Stay close. The battle raged, a horrifying ballet of death and preservation. Anya fought with frantic devotion, guarding both her life and the remnants of her broken tribe. Each casualty, friend or foe, served as a stark reminder of Ragnar's devastation. She caught sight of Kalen across the melee, locked in combat with a particularly formidable Bloodfang warrior. His movements remained graceful and decisive, yet fatigue shadowed his features. She needed to reach him, but Lyra was proving a liability, her steps faltering from lingering trauma. She couldn't abandon her, that Kalen was at risk. "Lyra, listen," Anya said, urgency tightening her voice. "You need to find safety. Make for the Blackwood stronghold. Find cover and stay put. Can you manage that?" Lyra's gaze narrowed with suspicion. "Why? Are you ditching me?" "No! I need to help Kalen. He's in trouble. I can't safeguard both of you simultaneously. Please, Lyra, trust me, just this once." Lyra studied Anya's face, her expression veiled. Finally, a reluctant nod. "Fine, but be careful, Anya. I don't want you dead." Anya briefly squeezed Lyra's shoulder, then dashed toward Kalen. The Bloodfang was gaining control, each blow carrying devastating force. Kalen faltered, a thin stream of crimson tracing a path down his muzzle. Anya roared, throwing herself into the fray. She assailed the Bloodfang with renewed fury, her claws a whirlwind of shining metal. Caught off guard, the warrior stumbled, losing his balance. Kalen seized the chance, clapping his jaws around the warrior's throat. The Bloodfang crumpled, lifeless. Kalen faced Anya, his gaze a complex blend of gratitude and something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. "I owe you, Anya. You saved me." "We're in this together, Kalen," she replied, breathlessly. "We have to be," he acknowledged, his eyes locked on hers. For a heartbeat, the pandemonium of the battleground receded, replaced by a fierce connection that defied their history. But the moment shattered with the thunderous approach of another charging Bloodfang. They turned to meet this new threat, their bodies moving with uncanny synchronization. Anya was acutely aware that their alliance was fragile, forged in desperation more than trust. Yet, as they stood shoulder to shoulder against their common enemy, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps, against all odds, they could bridge the chasm between them. Perhaps, from the wreckage of the past, a shared future might emerge. But the road ahead was treacherous, and she knew their allegiances would be tested time and again. The weight of that burden pressed heavily on her soul. A burden she would shoulder for her surviving pack members, for Kalen's sake, and for a potential future that remained a distant glimmer. The Alpha's mate ozone and blood hung heavy, a cloying perfume on the ravaged air. Ragnar Bloodfang, a nightmarish figure bathed in the twilight's last gasp, surveyed the wreckage. A harsh, gravelly sound ripped from his throat, echoing across the desolate field. "Blackwood, don't be a craven! Or has Silverstream finally found some fangs?" Anya advanced, her gaze avise on Ragnar. The prisoner's haunted expression was gone, replaced by a flinty resolve. An intense, unwavering light burned in her eyes, unsettling even Kalen, who lingered several paces back. "I belong to no one, Bloodfang," she declared, her voice resonant with a newfound power. "And I'm here to finish this." Ragnar's mirth vanished. He scrutinized her, crimson eyes gleaming with dark amusement. "The Silverstream pup? You presume to challenge me? Your sire was a fool, and you a greater one still." He waved a dismissive hand. "Out of my way, whelp. I've no interest in playing with toys." "My father was a warrior," Anya countered, her claws extending imperceptibly. "And I am his legacy." A prickle of unease crawled across Kalen's skin as he watched Anya. He knew her spirit, her tenacity, but Ragnar was a seasoned butcher, empowered by an unsettling magic. He began to move forward, poised to intervene, but Anya's upraised hand halted him. Her unwavering gaze remained locked on Ragnar. "This is between us," she stated, her tone even, unwavering. "You despoiled my homeland, extinguished my family. Today, you atone." Ragnar roared again, the sound a discordant rasp against Anya's nerves. "You? A mere shadow? You believe you can stand against the Bloodfang? I shall relish breaking you, little wolf." He surged forward, a whirlwind of muscle and malice. With surprising litheness, Anya evaded his initial assault, her own claws flicking out in response. The force of her blow caught Ragnar off guard, leaving a crimson streak across his cheek. He bellowed in pain and fury, his eyes ignited with wrath. The clash commenced. Ragnar, the behemoth, relied on raw power. Anya, nimble and quick-witted, employed her agility and strategic cunning to avoid his onslaught and seek out vulnerabilities. She ducked beneath a sweeping arm that could have crushed her, spun, and delivered a sharp kick to his kneecap. Ragnar faltered, momentarily unbalanced. "You fight like a trapped rodent," he spat, regaining his footing. "And you fight like a brainless brute," Anya retorted, her breath catching in her throat. She understood she couldn't endure this for long. Ragnar's strength was undeniable. She needed an opening, a chink in his armor. She centered herself, drawing on the rage and sorrow that had sustained her, focusing it into a searing beam of intent. Ragnar intensified his assault, driving her back toward the precipice of the battlefield. She felt the slick earth beneath her paws, the oppressive reek of death invading her senses. He lifted his clawed hand, ready to deliver the killing strike. Anya recognized her chance. As Ragnar's hand descended, she collapsed to the earth, slithering between his legs. She twisted, her claws carving across his exposed abdomen. Ragnar howled, clutching at the wound, which, while shallow, afforded her a crucial moment. Anya sprang back up, her eyes blazing with defiance. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she channeled the memory of her father, her pack, all that Ragnar had stolen. She lunged, claws extended, targeting his throat. Ragnar attempted to block, but he was too sluggish. Anya's claws struck true, slicing through his flesh. He stumbled backward, hand flying to his neck, disbelief flooding his eyes. A gurgling sound escaped him, a strangled attempt at speech, but only blood emerged. He crumpled to the ground, his body writhing, his gaze fixed vacantly on the heavens. Silence enveloped the battlefield. The remaining Bloodfangs, witnessing their leader's demise, scattered in disarray, melting into the forest. The Blackwood pack, stunned by the spectacle, stared at Anya in stunned silence. Anya stood above Ragnar's corpse, her chest heaving, her body trembling with exhaustion. She had succeeded. She had avenged her pack. But as she looked down at the lifeless form, she felt not triumph, but a profound emptiness. Kalen approached cautiously, his expression inscrutable. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze searching hers. "Anya," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mix of grief and defiance. "He's dead," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Kalen confirmed. "He is." He closed the distance between them, reaching out to touch her. Anya recoiled slightly, then stilled, allowing him to cradle her face in his hands. His touch was warm, grounding. "You were extraordinary," he said, admiration evident in his eyes. "You saved us all." Anya shook her head. "I did it for my pack," she said. "For my father. And you did it for us," Kalen asserted, his voice resolute. "Whether you acknowledge it or not." He lowered his head, resting his forehead against hers. "Thank you, Anya." Anya closed her eyes, yielding to his touch. For the first time since the massacre, a spark of hope flickered within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could carve out a place in this new world, a purpose beyond retribution. But the path ahead remained uncertain. Fraught with peril and hardship, she remained an outsider, a Silverstream among Blackwoods, and Kalen still the Alpha who had decimated her pack, the bond she never desired. The defeat of Ragnar Bloodfang was a victory, but only the genesis of a long and arduous voyage. The Blackwood pack approached Anya tentatively, their expressions a blend of respect and mistrust. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "You fought valiantly, Silverstream," she conceded, her voice a grudging acknowledgment of Anya's prowess. "But don't imagine this alters anything. You remain one of them." Anya met Lyra's gaze without flinching. "I know my identity," she stated, "and I know what I represent." She surveyed the Blackwood pack, the faces still guarded, still skeptical. "I seek neither your absolution," she continued, "nor your embrace. I simply ask for the opportunity to prove my worth." Kalen stepped forward, placing a hand on Anya's shoulder. "Anya has proven her worth today," he declared, his voice resonating with authority. "She safeguarded our pack. She has earned our respect." He scanned his pack, his eyes challenging dissent. "From this day forth, Anya Silverstream is one of us." A ripple of murmurs spread through the ranks. Some nodded in agreement, others remained dubious. But none dared defy Kalen's decree. Anya looked at Kalen, her heart swirling with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. He had embraced her, defended her, claimed her as his own. But could she truly place her trust in him? Could she ever truly bury the past? Only time would reveal the answer. A new dawn, the air tasted of ash and iron, a coppery bite that lingered at the back of Anya's throat. Against the pearly light of dawn, the Blackwood pack had coalesced in the clearing. Weariness carved itself into the lines of their faces, though beneath the exhaustion, a nascent sentiment flickered respect. Still fragile, unsure, but Anya perceived it nonetheless. Not for her, perhaps, but for the deeds she had performed. Kalen occupied the platform where Ragnar had once reveled, every inch the Alpha now, his posture firm, determination etched on his features. But as his eyes met Anya's, a softer light shone through the steel, revealing a vulnerability unseen before. The power radiating from him felt altered, less a threat, more a shared burden. He lifted a hand, silencing the murmurs that rippled through the throng. His voice, amplified by innate strength, resounded across the space. "Blackwood," he began, his gaze encompassing them all. "We've endured losses. Ragnar Bloodfang inflicted wounds that will ache for years to come." A low growl vibrated through the pack at the mention of Ragnar's name, a collective expression of pain and anger. Yet, we stand here, victorious. We defended our territory, shielded our kin, and exacted retribution for the fallen. Kalen paused, his gaze drawn to the shrouded forms laid out at the edge of the clearing. Torin stood sentinel, his face a granite mask of grief and resolution. "This victory was not mine alone," Kalen declared, sincerity ringing in his tone. "Anya Silverstream fought alongside us, against a mutual foe. She demonstrated bravery, skill, and strategic acumen that preserved lives." A fresh swell of voices rose, louder now, as suspicion and grudging admiration vied for dominance in their eyes. Torin's stance remained inflexible, arms crossed. A wall of mistrust and a reminder of the prejudice she still faced. Some of you, Kalen continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge, still nurse doubts. You brand her an outsider, the progeny of an enemy. He paused, allowing his words to penetrate. But I say to you now, Anya Silverstream is no enemy. She has proven her allegiance, her strength, her dedication to our cause. He descended from the platform, approaching Anya, his gaze locked on hers. The clearing hushed, every breath suspended. Reaching her, he took her hand, an electric current surging through her veins at his touch. The bond between them resonated, a tangible force. This may seem abrupt, unforeseen by some, but I am Alpha, and I must make a decision for the good of my pack Skra, for our collective future. He faced the assembled wolves, raising Anya's hand high. I declare Anya Silverstream as my mate. She will stand at my side as Luna of the Blackwood pack. A collective gasp echoed through the space. Anya's heart hammered in her chest, a frantic rhythm against the sudden silence. She had braced herself for hostility, resentment, perhaps even outright defiance, but not this. This acceptance. However hesitant, Torin strode forward, his expression thunderous. Alpha, with all respect, this is folly. She is Silverstream. Her blood carries the stain of treachery. Kalen's eyes flashed with controlled fury. Enough, Torin. Anya has earned her place. I will not brook insubordination. He turned back to Anya, his voice softening with an appeal. Do you accept, Anya? Will you choose to stand with me? Anya looked at Kalen, seeing both hope and vulnerability in his gaze. She surveyed the faces in the crowd, a tapestry of fear and curiosity. She thought of her father, of the pack she had lost, of the vengeance that had driven her for so long. She considered the future looming ahead, uncertain, daunting, yet filled with possibility. Something new, something different, something more. Drawing a deep breath, she met Kalen's gaze, her voice ringing with clarity and resolve. I accept, Kalen. I will stand with you. A collective exhalation swept through the pack, a release of weeks-long tension. Some bowed their heads in acknowledgement, others offered tentative, shy smiles. Torin remained impassive, his gaze narrowed with suspicion, but even he could not deny the force of Kalen's decree. Kalen squeezed Anya's hand, a silent promise exchanged between them. He addressed the pack again, his voice resonating with authority. From this day onward, we are one, Blackwood and Silverstream, united against any threat. We will remember the past, but we will not be shackled by it. We will build a new tomorrow, together. He raised his other hand, signaling the dissolution of the assembly. The wolves began to disperse, their murmurs a mixture of speculation and nascent acceptance. Anya felt their eyes on her, weighing, evaluating. She knew she faced a long journey to earn their full trust, to validate her worth. Torin approached, his face still a mask of disapproval. Alpha, he said, his voice respectful yet firm. I will obey your command. But I will not trust her. I will watch her every move. Kalen nodded, his expression unwavering. I expect nothing less, Torin. But remember, Anya is under my protection. Any harm that befalls her will be deemed an act of betrayal. Torin bowed his head and retreated, melting into the shadows of the trees. Anya shivered, despite the strengthening sun. She knew that universal acceptance might remain elusive, but she possessed Kalen's support, and for now, that was enough. Kalen turned to her, his eyes filled with affection. It will require time, Anya, but they will come to see you as I do. Anya smiled, a genuine smile that lit her face. I know, and I'm ready. I'm ready to face whatever lies ahead, as long as I have you at my side. They stood together, hand in hand, watching the sunrise paint the horizon. The air still carried the scents of ash and blood, but now an undertone of something new permeated the air. Hope. The dawn was breaking, not simply on a fresh day, but on a new chapter for the Blackwood pack. And Anya Silverstream, the daughter of their former enemy, was now their queen.